YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with the latest NFL free agency signings, and I'm going to go through and grade these like I did with all the other signings and the rest of the signings to come. If you go to our channel, I'm going to look at all these videos, grading all the signings and much more, all kinds of predictions, and on our second channel, we have all the trade grades, so more signings to come, so that means more signing grades to come, and at the end of free agency, we'll have full grades, winners and losers, and updated mock drafts, of course, because a lot of things changed there. So that's all coming pretty soon. Go to both of our channels here. You can subscribe to both. There's a link down below for the Goat House Plus channel. And then if you go to our Twitter, which is linked down below, breaking news, instant reactions, always talking football, always talking free agency, NFL draft, and answering any questions. So that Twitter's a must-follow there. Check out that link down below. We have a new podcast, 4 episodes out, Spotify, Apple, links down below as well. The first one, Todd Gurley, was surprisingly released by the Rams yesterday, and then this morning signed by the Falcons, 1 year, $5 million deal. And, is Todd Gurley going to be the same? He was the best running back in football at one point, maybe just a couple years ago. Is he going to be that Todd Gurley? Do I think he's going to be that Todd Gurley? I don't think so. He's got some wear on him. Banged up knees, apparently has arthritis in his knees. That's unfortunate, but he's still a very good back and was behind a pretty darn terrible Rams offensive line. The Falcons offensive line hasn't been playing that good, but they got some young guys in there last year that should they're going to be healthier and should continue to grow. So the Falcons offensive line should be an upgrade this year, pretty much by default, just by getting better with young talent. But again, 1 year, $5 million deal, and I'm giving this one an A+. I mean, that's low risk, high reward here. The Falcons get better. Another thing that stands out about the Falcons, they went into free agency. All of us, most of us, the realistic ones, expect it. We know what to expect when it comes to free agency. Especially teams on the lower end of cap. The Falcons actually do a good job. They're on the lower end of cap, tighten cap, and they're still able to make some moves. They get Dante Fowler, they get Todd Gurley, both guys from the Rams actually, but they get some big names in here. And there's other teams that maybe had a little more cap or, in the same boat, and they're just sitting there doing nothing. And I don't really blame teams when they're not able to do much, but the Falcons making some of those teams look silly. They didn't do a whole bunch, but they're able to do a little more than we expected them to do. They trade for Hayden Hurst, and they get 2 big free agents, a couple other guys in there. So this one's an A+. I mean, they get better with that. 1 year, $5 million. We'll see where his health's at. I think he'll play pretty solid from. Again, we're not expecting anything like MVP caliber, nothing like that, but this is a good signing, and again, low risk. Impressed by the Falcons. Other running back signed today, Melvin Gordon goes to the Broncos. The deal is 2 years, $16 million. Unfortunate for him because he was going to get $10 million a year from the Chargers, which he declined. And if you remember, he was holding out. He wanted more money, and then he didn't really have the best season. Honestly, he didn't have a terrible season, but he didn't have the best season. Kept putting the ball on the ground a bit. But yeah, that's what happens when you're sitting out, holding out, and that could happen. I really like the idea of the duo with Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay. It's a little surprising how badly the Broncos wanted another, running back that could be a potential RB1, even though they have one in Phillip Lindsay, because they want 2 of those guys out there. They want to, and what that means, they want to run the ball a little better. They want to be more effective, and that's going to open up the passing game for their young quarterback, Drew Lock. I like this. I like this a lot. I think Gordon bounces back. The season has a good season. I'm going to give it an A. $8 million a year is up there for running backs, but it's really not expensive. To me, it's low risk. 2 years, $16 million. You're not locking him up long term. I think he'll be pretty damn good for them. What I don't want him to do is take away. The carries are going to get taken away, but not a tremendous amount from Phillip Lindsay because I like the fit with him. He's looked real good, and he's really improving. So, but. Yeah, it's just going to create more for the running attack, but more for Drew Lock as well. So overall, I really like the new duo. I think Royce Freeman's pretty solid as well, but we're going to see what happens with him. But they definitely got better. It's a running back duo that's pretty impressive towards the top of the NFL. Moving on to the next free agent that signed was Andrus Peat. Gets a big deal from the Saints. He was sitting around for a little bit, but they end up striking a deal, 5-year, $57.5 million. It's a big number. The problem with Andrus Peat, the problem with people out there with Andrus Peat is, they know he's probably the weakest link on this Saints, I would call a pretty darn good offensive line. Drew Brees has been protected pretty well for the most part, and even Teddy Bridgewater when he was in there. So Peat being the weakest link, everyone's always pointing the finger at him and just they know he's the weakest link, but that doesn't mean he's weak. I think he's a pretty solid guard. There's just better guys, top-tier talents along that offensive line. Still a very young guard, so that makes sense with the 5-year deal. It's a little longer, maybe a little more expensive than I thought it would be, but he's a young guard that's still continuing to improve. And I like when solid offensive lines keep the unit together, especially bringing back a young guy. So yeah, nothing tremendous. Like I said, maybe 5 years, a little lengthier than I thought, a little more money than I thought, but I don't mind this one at all. I'm going to give it a B. Keeping the offensive line together. He's a young option that's going to continue to get better. I don't mind this one. I know some people were a little confused about the price or the length, but I can understand why maybe a little bit. But I don't mind Peat. Still young, getting a lot better. Keep the unit together. That's a B for me. Then we're moving on to who they just signed right before recording this video. They signed Emmanuel Sanders, which I didn't think they were really going to be an option. We knew the Saints needed a receiver. I didn't really think this was that realistic of a landing spot, even though it ends up being. I know there was some NFC teams that had interest, out there. The Cowboys and the Packers were two of them, actually. Cowboys, a little surprising, but that's good. They need more receivers for McCarthy's offense, so that's a good sign, really. But 2 years, $16 million for Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. So maybe a little bit of a discount there, $8 million per year. But yeah, why it was kind of surprising with the Saints is because they were right under $10 million in cap space. So that was a little surprising, and they, being as good of a draft class it is receiver wise, I kind of voiced my opinion on that all, leading up to free agency. I would rather go to the draft than spend big in free agency, but they didn't really spend big here. I mean, for them, $8 million a year, I guess, is pretty big. So they're kind of going to be close to, they're going to bring in some minor upgrades, some minor additions here, but they're going to be pretty close to shut down unless, Janoris Jenkins is cut, which big number, big cap hit this year, so I was surprised he was not yet, but they do kind of need him out there at corner, so we'll see what happens there. So that kind of limits them, but Emmanuel Sanders, instantly makes his team a lot better. Finally somebody else for Michael Thomas. That's a good thing here. Not blown away by it, but I'm going to give it a B. It's a little cheaper, but we'll see what they do in the draft. I mean, they could possibly add another one as well, but yeah, I was more a fan of going to the draft for a receiver over than paying one. But then again, yeah, $8 million per year, pretty good deal. So I'll give it a B. They get better with this. And then moving on to Eric Ebron goes to the Steelers. And Ebron seems to be one of those players a lot of people rip quite a bit. Maybe in the Twitter world, but I don't mind. Yeah, he didn't play that great last year. It seems like his only really solid season was with Andrew Luck, who was a top-notch quarterback, top-tier quarterback, pretty much elite. So yeah, I guess I understand, maybe some doubt with Eric Ebron, but 2 year, $12 million, that's $6 million per year. Meanwhile, some of these tight ends are getting north of $10 million per year. Maybe those tight ends are a little better, but Ebron's still a threat to me. I think he fits Big Ben. I think he fits Big Ben's offense. So I do like to sign the Steelers, another team that were in cap space hell pretty much. Had to cut some guys to save barely anything, and had a need at tight end. They're able to get a tight end like this a little cheaper than maybe I expected. I really like this deal. I like the fit, low risk, high reward. I'm going to give it an A+. $6 million per year. I would have guessed he would have got probably 8 per year. For them to be able to do this, that's great for their offense here. So, he makes them better. People act like Ebron's this terrible player. He doesn't make the Steelers worse in here. It's a cheap deal. A tight end that they haven't had. They've had some struggles at tight end too. So I like this for the Steelers a lot. And then Clinton Dix, the safety from the Bears to the Cowboys. But you kind of back up a little bit. 2018 season, he gets traded from the Packers to the Redskins, and then he goes to the Redskins from the Bears and now to the Cowboys. So that's 4 teams in how many years? That kind of sums up a lot. He's a big name. And I think that's why people get amped up. But if you watch, I'm not a big fan of Clinton Dix. If you watch the Bears last year, Eddie Jackson had to do a whole lot for that team. He was, he had a whole lot of responsibilities because of the lack of play. Them missing Adrian Amos. I know we know Amos is better than Clinton Dix, but it felt like a giant downgrade. And there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why the guy was on 4 teams, and how they're going to be the 3rd year or the 4th year now. So. Yeah, there's a reason for all that. I think people get hyped up in the name, but I'm not a huge fan. But 1 year, $4 million. I'm kind of back and forth on this one where to grade it. It's a cheaper deal. It's 1 year, so I'm going to give it a C. It was close to giving it a D because I'm not a big fan. And at the same time, the Cowboys, it's just enough's enough. Messing around with these mediocre receivers. Unproven. Receivers. Enough's enough with that. So that kind of gets to me a little bit. I'd much rather go to the draft, even if it's second round. So, 1 year, $4 million, it's not going to hurt too bad. You got to save, maybe he's still, even though I'm not a huge fan of his game, he's still probably better than some of the safeties they've had. So, 1 year, $4 million, it's not the worst thing in the world. But, yeah, I just don't like the route, the Cowboys. It's just kind of like the Eagles been doing with their corners, and they finally had enough. Let's go get a goddamn corner, Same thing should be said for the Cowboys. I know it's easier said than done, but it's kind of getting to me now, And then some of the minor, so not a whole bunch of signings in this video. The other videos, we got several other videos just like this with the other signings, a bunch of signings in those ones. A lot of A's, all A's here you see on this page. Bucks signed Joe Haeg from the Colts. His experience at tackle and guard. I think they're going to use him at tackle. Either way, I think he'll be used. 1 year, $2.3 million. It's an A, low risk, high reward. A guy that was with the best offensive line in football in the Colts, didn't get a whole bunch of playing time, but has experience at some positions and I think some upside here. Browns got a couple DBs. Browns signed Kevin Johnson. 1 year, $3.5 million. Never been a huge fan of Kevin Johnson. Even back when he was drafted, I thought it was a reach for him on the Texans. So nothing's really surprised me with him. But he's still a solid rotation corner option in a 1 year, $3.5 million compared to some of these other corners that he's not much lower than. That's a real cheap deal. And, you expect the Browns to go in there with Denzel Ward on one side, Greedy Williams on the other side. They're going to need another option there for the outside, possibly for Greedy Williams. Denzel Ward's locked in place. So I think it's a good option. $3.5 million for, I call it, he's a decent corner. And then they get Andrus Peat, safety, just with the Vikings, 1 year, $2.25 million. And I give that an A as well. A safety that can do multiple things. I think he can play free or strong. Pretty good tackler, plays in the box quite a bit as well. So that's a low risk, not too much high reward there, but it's a good cheap deal for them. And the Steelers signed Steven Wisniewski from the Chiefs, another guy that has experience at guard and center, which the Steelers could use there. He's probably going to play guard, I'd say, but 2 year, $2.8 million, lower risk. I think high reward. I think it's a pretty solid guard option. Pouncey didn't play that. I think he made the Pro Bowl, but I didn't think he played that great. I think Pouncey would be the center, but I didn't think he played that great of a season. But he will be the center this year. But who is it going to be going forward? So you got him for 2 years, some upside here. So I think these are all A's for these somewhat minor signings that could be bigger. A couple of offensive linemen here could be, definitely should be in for some starter roles. So we'll see how they turn out there. But still a lot of top tier free agents on the board. Recently did a predictions video with the remaining top free agents, predicting where they'll go, a bunch of different landing spots. So you can check that out. If you didn't see all the other big signings, all the other signings in general, I graded those. So those are on the channel. I graded the trades on our other channel. There's a link down in the description in the comments for that. Check it out. Please subscribe. Really appreciate it. All kinds of videos on the channel. A lot more on the way. A lot going on at Twitter. It's a must follow there. You'll find a link down below for that as well. That's going to do it for this one, though. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.